Welcome to Podcaster Toten. I'm Rad.
I'm Matt.
I am Tack.
We're here to discuss the topic of Nocturne Toten and Verrucht. Why does Ultimus show up there during Black Ops 1 and in Black Ops 3 when, from what we know from the timeline, uh, there should just be groups of Marines there, which is how they're depicted in World at War. But there is some level of like canon with Ultimus being there, and that's what we're here to discuss today. So, first thing, I guess, to point out that's interesting to me is that when Ultimus was added to Noct in Black Ops 1, they they talk, and they talk a lot. I think they just use like Shino Numa quotes, or maybe
Oh,
like
okay.
Kino quotes, but yeah, they talk a lot. But then in the Black Ops 3 version, they're completely silent.
Right.
What's weird too is that I did maybe was a unofficial response, but didn't they say that the reason why they're silent is to be similar to the original Noct and Verrucht?
Yeah, I would believe that,
Which,
but I think it's different with
but
Verrucht
for
though, because
yeah,
Verrucht
because
does
they
have quotes.
yeah, that was my question. Is that why? I mean, I guess it's easier for them to just be silent. And you don't have to record more lines for the two maps, but it's sort of strange because Verrucht did have a bunch of quotes. Um, so
It might just be thematic because Noct is so it's so simple.
mhm.
It's such an eerie map, and like playing the Black Ops 1 version is like it's so atmosphere breaking to hear just Richtofen yelling the same quote over and over again. I mean, it just doesn't really fit the map as well. So
And I
I
feel
could
like
see that view.
Yeah, I feel like the identity of like zombies really started to uh, gain shape in Shino Numa. So I guess like going with that thematic kind of explanation, it feels like Verrucht is a little bit closer to Noct than Shino Numa. So I guess it's like that even though there was talking, they still kind of associate it with that than sort of the beginning of Ultimus.
I mean, the reason why we're discussing why this could all be canon is because of some very cryptic Dr. Monty quotes that appear in the Chronicles versions of these maps. So I'm just going to read like an excerpt from the one from from the one from each. So the one from Noct says, "You know what I just realized? You weren't even there. At least not at first. It was some other random, unfortunate soldiers that had the misfortune to live through that horrible night, or Noct as it was known." And then with
Hmm.
Verrucht, it's a much shorter excerpt. I'd give you a full explanation of everything that happened there, but it would only be horrible, terrible, grim, depressing. Oh fuck, you weren't there either, but then you were. So what do you guys make of that?
Yeah, that sounds pretty canon to me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I don't know, the two things that always come to mind is that like uh, there's an issue with Treyarch always seeming to canonize gameplay. So like I know it leads to a bunch of other problems down the line, but it does seem like by virtue of like talking about like the chalk drawings and all the other chalk drawings and all that stuff.
Brooks got the chalk.
Yeah, if that's canon, then Ultimus must have showed up at some point, and if that's the case, then yeah, it's. I think even Monty explicitly referencing it, and the possibility that if Chronicles and all those other things are like another cycle or another loop through, because I guess it's the implication that I think in the Radios and the Giant that they've been doing this over and over and over again. It's like, who's to say that there wasn't some variable universe where they did show up there? So I think it's like, I feel like it. Yeah, it is canon.
can I make a meta or ask a meta question? I completely missed this, but now I'm looking at this Monty Verrucht one, and he goes, he quotes, he goes, electroshock therapy, chemically engineered
Yeah,
beverages.
Right.
Can you believe that's how I actually described it back then?
Right.
Like,
So
yeah.
he's written the
yeah,
map descriptions.
yeah, right. Like all of a
Oh
sudden,
my
like Monty
god.
created Treyarch or something. Like the only place that's ever stated is in the map description on, I think like on the menu itself as you almost boot up the game.
Yeah.
Like that is
Yeah,
what is that?
yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
the. It's like where does that canon sort of draw the line? Like, is it like
Right.
okay, he created the map descriptions, but those map descriptions could also be like in universe, like maybe like
Right.
in the Chronorium. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think.
True, true.
He
It
I
reminds
guess
me
I'll
of
the perk jingles too.
Yeah, the perk.
yeah.
Yeah, because he sings the perk, which leads me
But
to
that
another question. Why do the perk machines not have any jingle or anything? Like, I know, like, the original idea in Mob of the Dead was that it didn't take place, but, like, if he created the perk jingles, why are they not in Mob? But anyway, yeah, because that would.
That's a discussion for another day. But
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
I
I do
know.
have
It's just
something.
like, oh, okay.
That's an interesting topic. But this kind of relates to like the supposed appearance of Gersh in Ultimus, because that's also from a Monty radio. He has a habit of canonizing things that don't necessarily need to be canon. But basically, the poster for Ascension shows Ultimus, except for Richtofen, who is just a bald man. But I always assumed it was just the artist saw him with a hat,
Yeah.
and then they were like, "Oh, he's gonna wear a spacesuit in this map. Just draw him with a spacesuit," and they just assumed he was bald, because he's got the same scar and everything. But Jason confirmed that wasn't Richtofen, Jason Blundell, and then later Monty says there was that time you guys fought with Gersh. You maybe you don't remember that, something like that.
I think you're definitely right in the beginning, though. It was probably meant to be Richtofen, but now we sort of retroactively made that a different character. So yeah,
retcon
I think
alert.
yeah, but it does bring into question. I feel like it just the larger theme is just sort of the mysteriousness behind Chronicles, because there was the Monty radios and there might have been some slight other changes too, but I guess it's kind of like that can be explained away by it's not the same Ascension that you played on Black Ops 1. This is like a another loop. So
Right.
like I feel like that just kind of ties into the larger theme, which then it kind of makes me wonder about like, well, what about the not the DL. I mean, I guess you could throw the DS ones in there, but like the iOS zombie maps too.
Right.
Like,
Right.
are all the remakes just sort of like other timelines or failed universes or something like that? Like,
Okay,
I,
yeah. So I have a question. Do you think the the return to the Monty quote sounds to me like they went back to, I guess, specifically for Baroque, no, sorry, for Noct,
not.
that they were in the same, that it takes place in the same universe as our Noct, so to speak, just referencing the random unfortunate soldiers, yada yada. Like, seems like it's referencing that same timeline. Do you think it's just a completely new part of the loop?
I mean, it
Yeah,
could be like a five versus classified, right? Because um, where they I still have to remember the exact order of it, but anyway, like the Noct could have happened, and then maybe in the interim between like Noct and Verrucht, like they showed up. You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things where it technically doesn't adding it to the timeline. It doesn't necessarily make it a different timeline. You know what I
right.
mean? Like it just could be something that wasn't stated that happened. Like it could literally be as those Marines left, then Ultimus
Right.
shows up
Right.
for whatever particular reason.
There's like, I mean, in the timeline, there's a pretty significant gap between like when when Shino Numa and Deir Reese take place,
Mm-hmm.
of just them. Well, because it's like they start at Deir Reese, then he
Right.
transfers the test subjects there, he betrays Maxis, then Richtofen takes the subjects to Shino Numa to get his diary, and there's like
Yep.
a 2 week period, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, where he travels to Japan, and then a whole other like 2 weeks traveling back to Deir Reese. And I'm wondering, like, could they have gone to Noct to get a plane, and they were just there for a little bit? Could they have
Right.
passed through Verrucht for whatever reason? There's any infinite number of possibilities for like
Or
why
just
they
like
could be there.
teleporting glitches or
Right.
some strange loop like that too, kind of.
It's just not. I guess it wouldn't be totally necessary to be in the timeline. It's just a detour, kind of like what classified is when it's not in the timeline. But
Yeah.
it does happen in the cycle.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I could see that's a possibility. Or like you said, it's an alternate version of the cycle, an alternate timeline.
Which sad part is both could be true. um, because we have the Chronicles version, which I feel like the whole idea of Chronicles is like were an alternate cycle, but then the Chronicles maps also make it seem like they were there, which maybe means the Black Ops ones were the canon or the ones that take place in the normal timeline, and then maybe the Black Ops or 3 ones were like an alternate cycle or something like that. So that's the beauty of it. Everything can be true.
Yeah, another question I had for you guys was the second break talk regarding Nocturne and Toten. We know that, I'm trying to remember, I think it was right before, I don't remember which DLC it was for World at War that it was right before. It might have just been right after people found it or something. But there's the quote about, ever since the second outbreak at Nocturne and Toten, troops have been noticing strange radio transmissions and broadcasts taking place in the dead of night. And it's interesting that I want to think of Ultimus being the second outbreak, and I guess that could match the time. It's just interesting that this quote comes not out of a Chronicles information or ads or anything. This is from
2009. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think it could be one of those like retroactively. Either way, I think it implies that the strange broadcasts could, be the like group 935 or something like that. But you just made me think of, if the strange radio broadcasts, what if they're the Monty radios? Like, because it would account for, so they do show up again, and then maybe the strange, like there's no sort of source for the transmission, but they're like someone's talking on the radio, and maybe it's Monty. So like,
right, who knows what strange
here's an
radio
idea.
transmission means.
I mean, okay, you know how in Shinonuma, if you stand near like some of the machines, this happens in like Zetsubo no Shima too. Like, if you stand near some machines, I guess in Alpha Omega, but some machines you can hear voices kind of whispering, like they're digitized voices, like souls are part of the machine, right? Kind of like Maxis. And I'm thinking, like, could it be like, some of the zombies there, they're somehow their voices are being transmitted to those towers there? Does that have something to do with it?
You made me think too, sort of related but unrelated, like when Monty steps in, remember the perk machine? Supposedly he adds the perk machine, so like maybe, but the perk machine's in Varrock too, but like the other versions of Noct have had perk machines, so maybe it's also like another explanation of that. The second outbreak is when Monty now like steps in, which would mean Noct would be like the only pure one, right? But
actually, that also makes me think, because Varrock, there's a cipher somewhere, and somewhere in Black Ops 3, it's like from someone at Varrock, they can hear like something about Maxis and a girl and a house.
Like shut the windows, right?
Right. Could that be maybe the same broadcasts that they're hearing?
Something. I mean, it could. Maybe it's just. I kind of viewed it as like whatever places are like infused with like high traces of element 150. There's just like sort of a breakdown of reality, and things just kind of seep in and out. So maybe that's kind of why they hear that. I mean, we also, excluding like again like the iOS and stuff, but in the Black Ops remakes of the Shinonuma, isn't there's a radio? It was weird that it was in Shinonuma, but wasn't there a radio that explains how they got to Kino? Out of all the places, they added a radio in Shinonuma. Yes. Which I just found so bizarre. Why wasn't it in Doris? But
or Kino.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, I've got it up. It's like, Dempsey's like, it's like, oh, where are we? And Nikolai's like, a better question is, and Richtofen, when the hell are we? And then I think Takio throws up like always.
Yes. It's like the same thing as classified, right? The same sort of explanation that something was overloaded.
Right. The Wunderhoff it overloaded the teleporter.
Maybe that's what causes it. Maybe they overload it, and then they get sent to like Noct, Varrock, and then Kino or something like weird like that.
Oh, you know what? That actually does, because you remember, the comic loading screen for Kino?
Yeah.
I think, doesn't it show them teleporting, like from like in all 4 places?
Yeah, it does show people going to those places. Oh, that could be
it. Like they get flashes of those places, kind of like how Kino takes you to the room in the house before it takes you to the destination. That's interesting.
Yeah,
That
I
is.
think that's probably the safest explanation because like of how it was Shangri-La brought them back to classified. I think it just would account, and then you have your like second outbreak and strange things, and then it could also add to the why they're so confused because they were jumping around for a little bit, right? Because wouldn't it be that if they just were because it sounds like Richtofen was planning to teleport to Kino anyway. I know the intro to Kino is a little bit different, but so like it wouldn't like what makes them think aside from the teleporter was overloaded, but like what would necessarily make them think that they were jumping around in time unless they have something to kind of compare it to, and maybe
Right. Well,
that's why they were just shooting it all over the place.
it's a weird topic because I know in Call of the Dead, Richtofen mentions the teleporter's time circuits not
Oh
working.
yeah.
Like as if it's something he added to it, like it's part of the design.
I wonder if it's
so
kind of
strange.
like if you view like the ether as some type of like material, and it's they're kind of like maybe like the teleporting is like digging holes from like A to B. Like maybe there's just all these like every time or some type of high infusion of element 115. There's like it's like a web, and maybe that's why it isn't like a straight shot because you can bounce around because it's like you're trying to connect all these points at place and time through like some weird like time physicsy things that I
Right.
don't understand. So like they could just wind up there because it's somehow connected. Like those 3 points were heavily infused with 115, and maybe like if you mess something up, it's just so easy to go there. But
That's a good explanation. I have never really considered that.
Right, what a topic. What a topic. Well, I think on these revelations, we shall leave you the audience with I think this will be part one of just this theme of following I guess canonization and when maps take place and which universe they're in and
All right, canonization of gameplay. Something Jason Blundell loved to do.
yeah.
Big favorite of his.
Right.
We love him for it. We love him for it. So yeah, that ends this part
Everyone
of
give love in the chat.
Yeah, give love in the chat. Ask your own questions that don't need to be canonized. And we'll see you next time.
We will see you in
Bye-bye.
part two.
See ya.